All right, so you've asked a bunch of questions. You're probably very discouraged, but remember what I told you. Um, my whole purpose here is not to discourage anybody. It's actually to give you more realistic expectations. That's really the goal, to give you more realistic expectations. And also remember that I'm going to end this with a note of optimism, and I already explained a lot of the reasons why. But here's another question to ask. So you've asked, what's the origin story of this list? Where did it come from? Who put it together? Some are more reliable than others. You've also asked, why are these particular companies on this list? What was the eligibility criteria to make that list? You've also asked, what does it mean for them to be a second chance employer? How is that defined? Or a felony friendly employer? How is that defined? Are they discriminating against certain felonies like violent, sexual, repeat? Or are they discriminating relative to their industry like theft and retail, or, automotive insurance and theft of a motor vehicle? And so you've also asked, what kind of positions are open within that company? So they're felony friendly, like Amazon or Walmart, but certain positions are not available to people with certain kinds of felonies. All right, so now you want to ask, when was the last time it was updated? So for example, I keep a list. Here in Texas, I have a list of felony friendly employers. I'm doing this whole discussion and I'm going to end up saying something that sort of undermines the whole idea of a felony friendly list. And yet I have maintained one, myself and my two colleagues. So we try, and the way we do our list is we have a spreadsheet that lists a bunch of different columns where we try to explain why this company is on this list and when we last updated it. However, when it was just me, I for sure was not updating the list, every several months, every 3, 6 months, 9 months, or even a year, because after a few hundred companies, I don't have the time as one individual to go and call all these people every few months and ask if they are still, felony friendly or a second chance employer, but that's necessary. So even though someone like myself, I was creating this list, and me and my colleagues, we mean well in trying to make sure that our list is reliable, we simply don't have the time to go back and update it all the time. And that's very important. When I started off this discussion, it was about this, one particular list that used to float around, and it was just a Xerox copy of somebody who had handwritten in names like Sears, Kmart, Walmart, and, Kroger's. Well, that particular list has been circulating since the 90s, right? So over 20 years, that list has been circulating prisons. Now, in the last 10 years, it's posted on social media. Well, it should be obvious that there are some problems with an old list like that, because laws and policies change. Laws change at the federal level, which can incentivize employers to hire people with felonies. So for example, when Obama did the Second Chance Business Pledge, here's the president of the United States saying that he and others want to encourage companies to give people with a criminal background a second chance. So that was an incentive for companies to want to help people out. But then some laws will provide a disincentive or discourage people from hiring those with a criminal background. Sometimes this is going to happen because of, certain current events or very provocative and famous court cases that are in the news at the time. But laws change at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level. These things change every time new leaders are elected. New administrations at the local, state, and federal level change. And so whether or not a company wants to be known as felony friendly, or what kind of felons they will and will not accept, that's going to fluctuate with laws that either encourage or discourage their participation. The same thing is going to happen when it comes to particular policies an employer has, right? So with the aftermath of George Floyd, tons, like thousands of companies started like for example, giving money to Black Lives Matter and promoting Black Lives Matter and changing some of their hiring practices. And in that situation, a lot of it was race specific, but what that did was it bled over into people with criminal convictions and criminal backgrounds. And so employer hiring policies changed as a result of current events. So regardless of whether a federal, state, or local law changed, employer hiring practices changed in response to current events. And so that sort of thing is going to happen repeatedly. Every time there's new legislation, it might be in response to, some other crime that was committed that was in the news and was very popular. So these things change. When I mentioned earlier that some companies allow the management at a local dealership or a local business to make the decision as to whether or not they will hire someone with a felony background. So that one's an obvious case in which you might today have a particular location where the hiring manager is felony friendly and they are willing to put their name out there on a list and say they're felony friendly. They make a big deal about it. And then they get a new manager with new management and there's a policy change. Now the new manager is not down with that whole idea. They want to change maybe the direction the company was going. They want to change the focus of the company. So recently there's been a bunch of controversy with Bud Light and their move into the transgender and LGBT space. And there's been a big uproar on both sides in politics. My point is just to say that with a new marketing director, with new management, things begin to change. And so whatever the policies were back in the 90s or the 2000s, they may not be the same today. There was actually a grocery chain for which this was the case, which historically had a record of hiring people with felonies. And then there was an abrupt stop put to that a few years ago. So overall, the big idea here is just to ask, when was this list put together? When was it last updated? I would say if it's more than like 5 years old, it might already be outdated, probably even more than that. I would say, now, like, you want to get something that was after like 2021, because so much changed in our culture with regard to people in prison or who have served time in prison, that you want to have a list that was like after 2021. So 2021, 22, 23 and beyond I think is going to be pretty different than anything previous to that year.